during the break, which was this list of the 27 pages.
Of emergency and sole source procurement that was conducted last year. So GSA filed the report with the legislature, and then several senators were like, "Oh my God, what the hell was this?" So we wanted to see if you had a chance to look at that list and just what your thoughts were.
I really have problems with the way that the procurement is being done with using the air quote emergency powers and using emergency procurement. Emergency procurement is to be used only when there is a need to, because you don't really have an adequate time and opportunity to use the procurement process, the regular procurement process. And I have no problem with, the first 30, maybe even 60 days of emergency procurement from last March and April. But after that point, you had enough time there that you knew that things were going to continue, and you're going to be needing all kinds of hotels, you're going to need PPEs, you're going to be needing other kinds of things. And you should just use regular procurement procedures as per the law, and not hang your hat on the emergency that the governor continues to extend for months. Otherwise, as we've seen, this is our 13th month of emergency procurements now. And I don't believe that was what the legislature intended. I believe what the legislature intended was to give the governor the authority to initially use emergency and emergency procurement the first 60 days, but then to phase into the regular procurement process so that you don't have sole sourcing, you engender confidence in the procurement process and the prices that you're getting, and you're not being gouged, nor are you favoring your compadre or your compadre, but that everybody feels that this is being done fairly and equitably, and everybody has a fair chance of getting some of this money, that this largesse that's coming in. This can't be just all, well, I'm just going to give it to sole source it to my Madli or my Pari or somebody that I want. It really should go through the procurement process. I feel almost like Dr. Deborah Burks was saying, maybe the first 100,000 deaths were expected, but after that, they could have been avoided. The same thing here. The first 2 or 3 months probably may have needed the emergency procurement and emergency procurement process. But after that, it really should have gone to the regular procurement process as per the statute.
Yeah, and when you look at the types of purchases being made under the emergency procurement, I don't really see what's so emergency about them. Like, boat-shaped conference table, furniture, cutting grass. It just doesn't seem like you said. But is all at the BJ? Is it all at the discretion of the chief procurement officer?
Yeah, and fortunately, those two have great powers. I mean, the chief procurement officer and the director of public works have great discretion, but with that discretion, there really ought to be an understanding on their part of the responsibility, the fiduciary responsibility they have to the people of Guam of using the money appropriately. And they should have advised the governor that we can at this point utilize the regular procurement process and send this out to bid, have sealed bids, and have everybody participate in this, rather than just calling somebody up and say, hey, I need this. can you send it down and we'll just make it an emergency procurement.
So you're planning on doing an audit?
We're going to be issuing a couple of audits soon, and a decision on a procurement appeal, wherein we speak to this issue of the ethics of this all. And
Can you give us any more detail on that? Can you give us any more detail on that procurement appeal?
Well, we have one procurement appeal decision that's pending, and if it clears the way that I want it to clear, because the process here, everything that goes through here is quality assured review, and my staffers are really, I mean, they go through. They want to see every case that's being cited. They want to find that if you cite some piece of testimony, that they can find it and they can reference it, and they have it in every single thing is documented. That if anybody questions what was said, I mean, what the decision was or what the audit is, they can go back into the work papers and say, we can find that from the agency, we received this document that said this, and in that document, it stated this, and that's what's in our document, and so we have the proof for whatever we have. So it takes quite a while for everything to get out because of the need for quality assurance review, and that's the same thing. I mean, even with the audits, I mean, my poor staff is just really overworked right now because last year I made a commitment to Speaker Chulahi that I would try to get the audit out by March 31st. And so I had all of the agencies notified that you have until March 31st to get your audits out. And unfortunately, some of them are taking it literally and waited until March 31st to get it to me. And now it's all in quality in QAR. And as soon as we finish QARing it, they'll be released. And to the credit of my staff, we released 10 audits over the last 10 days that were in QAR. To date, we've released 17 of 28 audits. I expect to release another 7 or 8 in the next week. My only regret is that, unfortunately, the Guam-wide audit
I think your audio.
I think you muted. Yeah. All right. Did you mute yourself?
I did.
Oh,
I don't think I muted.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Guam-wide audit, government-wide audit, might not come out until the end of April or the first couple of weeks in May. We tried to get everything done. All the component units are finished, and they'll be released within the next week or 10 days. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done with the government-wide audit. And also the government-wide audit, as you probably saw if you read I haven't released it yet. On the Territorial Highway Fund, on the Guam Highway Fund and the Tourist Attraction Fund, we make mention of the fact that the financial management system of the government of Guam is antiquated. The AS 400. It makes things really difficult, and there's been problems with that because The government didn't renew the management contract on the AS400. There's been a dispute, and as a consequence, we've had problems closing the books for the last couple of fiscal years, actually. And so the auditors are having to do some auditing gymnastics to try to close books and redo everything to make sure that everything is done correctly and the numbers are correct. Yeah, but it's because the financial management system needs to be updated, upgraded, and the recommendation is made in both of those audits that there has to be something, either sign the management agreement or get a new machine, one of the two. But anyway.
Yeah, let's talk about this Gora audit, because Ray Topasny was on here yesterday, and he was saying it's the best audit that Gora's ever gotten in 500 years. 58 years. 58. I'm sorry.
I know you.
And to Gora and Ray's credit, it probably is. Seriously. You remember last year I was really down on them because they had two parts of the audit were qualified. And when you have qualified, that doesn't mean you're qualified that you're good. Unfortunately, in accounting parlance, some of the words just don't make sense. That's why when you say a modified contract, and sometimes we have to put in parentheses after it, clean, because people figure unmodified, that must be bad. If there's an un, then you think it's bad. And when you see qualified, you think, oh, that person's wonderful. But actually, qualified is the worst thing that can happen to you. It's what happened to DOE many years ago when they had qualified audits, and the third-party custodian was installed to oversee what was going on. And my concern last year was that Gora had two qualifieds, two major deficiencies, and two significant deficiencies. And you know, that's what GDOE had 10 years ago that resulted. And so I was concerned about it. And so this year, I probably overstepped myself, and I probably shouldn't say that publicly, but I overstepped the office by almost micromanaging the release of the audit. I mean, I was meeting with them on a weekly, bi-weekly meeting, and insisting that I be provided with updates on what was pending, what they hadn't provided, why they hadn't provided it, and we would meet and fight it through. And to their credit, they complied with all of the meetings that we've had and all the requests of their auditors. And yesterday, when we had our exit interview, I was pleasantly surprised, but I commended them because they managed to get rid of both of the qualifieds and clean that up, thankfully. And they got rid of the two major deficiencies, but they still have about 6 significant deficiencies, which is less than major. And so it is the best audit that this agency has had in decades, or at least since I've been here too, or at least when watching it since when I was at the legislature. So they are to be commended. And I told them yesterday, see, it is possible, one, to get it out in a timely fashion, two, to finally get rid of the qualified things, if you just bear down on all of the parts of your component units. And that's what I tried to explain to Speaker Chalahi last year, was that it's trying to get this whole thing, it's like straightening out my teeth. You know, all these years it's been crooked, and it's not going to be easy trying to straighten it. and you kind of have to tighten very slowly all the parts to try to straighten it out. And I made them do Gantt charts on when I wanted everything done, what needed to be done at certain time periods. And so everybody's now finished by the 31st, save for 2 agencies. And I'll talk about that later. But now I'm telling them what they need to do is have a Gantt chart for the entire year, that they really should be closing their books every month. They should be reconciling every quarter so that everything is set throughout the year. So when it comes to September the 30th, they can give the auditors the first 3 quarters already closed. They can take a couple of weeks to close the 4th quarter, and we can get the audits out in 3 months rather than 6 or 7 months. And so it's a slow process, but I'm showing them that it is possible if we just all work together and just organize and sit on people. I mean, I don't like to do that, but I have to, because I promised the speaker that I would try to get the audit out by the end of March, which was yesterday. And I have now all the audits here. They're just being QAR'd, but we just need to work on the GovGuam-wide audit. And I'm going to have to call her after this to apologize that the GovGuam-wide audit isn't going to be in the next in this batch, and but that it's getting there. But Department of Administration needs to do something about their financial management system, for sure. The 2 that aren't finished are GACs.
Guahan Academy Charter School.
Yeah, they're out. They're missing 2 years of audits, and I keep trying to get their auditor to do something about getting it released. And I'm hoping. Thankfully, it's not a major component unit of the government, so it won't hold up the release of the GovGuam-wide audit. Unlike GORA last year, because it wasn't done, we couldn't release the government-wide audit because otherwise it would have made the government-wide audit a qualified audit, or
basically incomplete, right? Yeah. Hey, BJ, let's just jump over to land trust, right? There were a lot of things on the compliance portion of the audit that your auditors noticed and were concerned about.
Yeah. And I'm glad you point that out, because I'd like to. We spent a lot of money. The government agencies spend a lot of money getting these audits done, and I really hope that those people in power and those of you in the media take some time to read them. And I know it's impossible to follow the numbers, and I'll tell you, just ignore the numbers. The pages where they have all these numbers, you can't reference them, so you don't know. You have to take it on faith that those numbers are correct, and the auditors are sure that they are. But the one thing that people should dwell on is that, as you put it, Finno English, the writing, the narrative. Read the compliance report, which is either a separate part of it's a separate document like you have in Chamorro Land Trust, where it's a separate document. In some of them, the compliance report is at the very end of the financial audit. I don't know why some of them put it in there and don't have it separate. But anyway, if you're looking for it, it's usually at the end or in a separate document. And it's the called compliance report. And it will list where the agency needs to improve certain things. And, it's like the report card. These, you get the qualified or unmodified, or you get a F or a D if you get a major deficiency or a significant deficiency. And so that's where that's at and what needs to be done. There's also the management letter where the auditors write to the board and says, you really got to get on your executive director to clean these things up. And also after all the numbers, there's the notes. And if you read that helps to explain what all the numbers mean and why all those numbers were what they were. And the management MD&A, the management discussion and analysis in the finance report will explain to you what the agency does. And it's really informative because it tells you everything it's supposed to be doing. And so it's been great reading these things. I mean, I'm losing my vision with living in a white screen.
Getting Keaton. Well, BJ, thanks for your time. We got to run because we got a bunch of other people coming on. But
okay, no problem.
I appreciate that you kind of explained the different parts of the audit and what they entail. Because I mean, even for people who are in the media and it's their job to dissect documents or whatever, read it. Sometimes it is a little overwhelming.
Especially when you're cranking them out like one a day.
Yeah, you guys over there just like this with these audits, like boom, boom, boom. PBS lost money because they're doing the governor's commercials and they're competing with the private sector.
The great thing about the audit is that if you look at PBS, one of the things that the auditor discovered was that ever since, all the people that are hired under the grant are not GovWam employees and are not eligible for the retirement fund. And they said, but the statute says that the employees that PBS is supposed to be allowed were given the option of going into the government retirement fund.
Right, I saw that.
And there's half their employees that never had been. And that needs to be looked at, And if you look at the one for the ancestral lands, one of the things that they pointed out in there was that last year, when Ancestral Lands got that $5 million from AT&T, they put it into their infrastructure fund, and the auditor pointed out that it doesn't belong in the infrastructure fund; it belongs in the trust fund because that's not for infrastructure. That money was from trust land at Gun Beach. And should be used for those people who have been dispossessed of their land and will never get it back. Like maybe when the governor builds her hospital out on Route 15, when federal government gives that back to us, it really should go back to the ancestral landowners.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then the ancestral land, the owners of land before the war really ought to be compensated, and it'll be that fund that will compensate that family or those families for the land that they'll never get back because though it was returned to the government has decided that it's going to use it for something else.
Right.
In the same way that up at the airport, some people got land back and made money around the airport, but those people with land underneath the runway never got their land back and consequently will never get to have use of that land for either as their houses or to sell or lease it. And so the Ancestral Lands Commission should use the trust fund to compensate them. That's what Benny Crawford was fighting for.
Well, thank you, BJ.
Anyway.
No, yeah,
Okay.
it's a good talk. We'll
Thanks.
see you. Appreciate it.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Hope you find the golden egg.